You'll vote for Tim O'Connor, 'cause he believes in the Constitution. And as your assemblyman, he will be your voice. He'll never let you down, make him the choice. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We finally had a man who hears your voice. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Tim O'Connor is the only choice. Write in Tim O'Connor, Libertarian, for New York State Senate, Senate District 51.
All right, guys, it's Friday night, October 16th, 2020. And once again, big thanks going out to my buddy, Harold Mark Jordan and Hot Vent. What a great compliment that was. What a great compliment it is to have people offer me things like that. What a great compliment it is to have people talk to me about their problems and their proposed solutions. On that note, guys, I'm still looking for Democrats who want to ask a Senate candidate some questions. Okay, I know that most of my friends and everybody, we all kind of lean towards the conservative side of the spectrum or the way more less government side. And so I want to hear from Democrats. I want to get into that debate. It's been a tough one, but tomorrow, Jim Barber and I, guys, and I'm going to get it on my Senate page somehow. We're having a Zoom meeting. We're going to be talking about solutions for upstate New York. And as you guys know, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's courage to continue that counts. And that's the real deal. That's what I'm doing. That's why I clog up the airways during the week and on Friday nights. And guys, I've been being politically active. I've got some things to talk about. But remember, the likes, the comments, the shares, and especially the questions keep this show going and keep me motivated to do this. All right. And I see I got a like already. I love that when that happens, guys. I love it. And I am broadcasting to 3 platforms. I am live on Twitter, I am live on the YouTubes, and I am live at Tim for Senate. So, guys, we've got to talk about the motivation behind why all these towns, villages, and municipalities are, in fact, finally now, okay, depending on where you stand, but we're talking about mask mandates every day, okay, in New York State. And guys, we've got to talk about the why behind that. I hope, and I'm sure because some of you guys listen to me occasionally or regularly, the why behind that needs to be discussed, okay? Cuomo, being the Lord Emperor of New York State, and given entire power over to make executive orders with an emergency power situation, okay, an emergency power grab, is threatening these municipalities, these villages, these towns with withholding funding. You heard me right, okay? To force these guys to write laws that will enforce and give the police departments, whom we have respect for, the impetus and the teeth to enforce these legislative deals. Okay, they can now go into your house and fine you. They can now, as you see them written into law, they can now go into your house and fine you. They can go into your house and take your stuff. Yes, Tommy Esper. Yes, brother. Back in the day at the Sip and Sail, perhaps at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, before we started working or something, or if we were just hanging out, we might have had a shot or two. Those were the good old days, man. We're too old for that stuff now, and you know it. So don't tempt me. So, guys, literally, I have a copy, and if you want a copy of it, I have a conference call between Rabbi, I think it's Israel Kahanan, okay? And he represents a large group of rabbis in New York City. And so we're going to that was a good one. I'll get there. You hang in. So basically, we have this recording of Cuomo talking about the response to COVID and how what his goal is to help alleviate the fear of COVID, and then we can kind of calm down on the responses to COVID. And so he's basically pandering to his audience. These folks, the folks in the city, vote in a block. They know how to vote in a block, and they know how to craft legislative platitudes, and they know how to get effective legislation by voting in a block, and that's okay. But what they're doing is Cuomo is apologizing to him for de Blasio writing laws to enforce his executive orders, and then enforcing those laws on religious ceremonies, including weddings and excuse me, funerals, things like that. So you can hear Cuomo say, well, he's not reacting rationally, and we've got to get the infection rate down, but he seems to be overreacting, and it's a fear-based response. It's not a science-based response. And guys, if you want a copy of that, I will gladly, you message me on my regular page, or you message me on my Senate page, and I will forward you a copy of that conversation. I'm not going to post it here because I don't want to risk losing my platform, but I'm more than willing to talk about Cuomo. So when you see all these guys who are backfilling Cuomo's executive orders, they should know, okay? They literally should know, guys, that he will sell them out at the drop of a hat. Period. Okay, that's what he does all the time. He makes executive orders, and then he points at the little guy who enforces his executive orders and goes, they enforced it wrong. That's not what I meant. Or they're reacting poorly to what I said, and they need to be nicer to their constituents so that you guys can still all vote for me. And so the guys, and I apologize for the pejorative language, okay? The guys and girls that are enforcing these mandates, that are writing these mandates into law to give these executive orders teeth on a local level, he will sell you out in a heartbeat, okay? And when your town suffers and you lose population because of it, he's going to blame you. So you've got to make your own decisions. I get that you've got to serve a budget. And that's one of the problems, guys, that I talk about all the time in New York State, that we all serve budgets, from your local town assessor to your town supervisor to your county executive to your county elected officials. They are all serving a budget constantly, and they're serving a budget that's handed to them from the next level. They're saying, here's all these things that you have to do. Here's all these things that you have to pay for. All of these things that get paid for, you have to pay for them. Here's the law. Here's the way to enforce it. And then they offer money for that. The state says, well, we'll pay for half of it, but you got to pass some of it on to that's why our taxes are high. You got to pass it on to people in the community. They grant money for infrastructure projects, and they grant half of it. Okay, so you get half of the money, and then the rest of the cost gets passed on. So, guys, one of the things that I'm going to talk to Jim Barber about tomorrow, guys, is the fact that in every county in Senate District 51, the proportion of what would be called tax-free, what is the word I'm looking for? Somebody type it up for me. Anyways, like hospitals and colleges and stuff like that, they don't pay property tax. They don't pay a revenue tax. So all of the burden, and not all the burden because they know they kick in money, but all of those things are tax-free properties that have to be carried. The burden of the taxation and the maintenance on their streets and the things that they get from your towns and cities, all of that is carried by our communities. And how do we fix that? Number one, we've got to start fixing it by rejecting unfunded mandates. Okay, that's the number one thing. That's a battle that we've got to fight. And if we don't fight it, guys, people don't have to live in New York State. They're not obligated to stay here. When I see South Dakota just came across with a 4.1% unemployment rate in South Dakota, that's economic opportunity when we're at 10, 11, 12, 13% right now because of the government response to COVID. And all of the small businesses that we lost, it's painful. It's painful to see. It's a failure of this top-down governing structure, which you guys know I stand against, right? We have to reorganize locally. I'm like Adam Kokesh, guys. If you don't know who Adam Kokesh is, you should check him out. Localization offers us a lot of solutions, especially in New York State. And I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow with Jim Barber. As a matter of fact, I think on some level he understands that. We had a phone conversation. I think on some level he agrees with that. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. He's already halfway to libertarian, like Rileyism. You still listen, but to be a full libertarian, you have to get a license for your beard, and your beard is right now not licensed because you're too in love with Hillary Clinton, and we all know that. Everyone knows that. So, guys, what I'm looking for, guys, is questions that you think a Democrat would want to ask, or if you are a Democrat, please ask those questions. So we covered the mask mandates, we covered Cuomo. One of the things that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about my personal political activism. Some of you saw on my personal page a concern about how a property was recently seized in Otsego County because of back taxes. And it looks like because they were having an event to promote the legalization of cannabis products, and that's what it looks like. So I was talking to the guy who owned or held the lease on that property, and he's offered to come on this show. Now, he's been involved in CBD, hemp, and cannabis production for, he said, 30 years. So when I talk about it, it's like a novice rookie. When he talks about it, we're going to have an expert. And if he's out there tonight, please give a shout out in the comment section. And his name's George, and I hope I say his last name right, is Norwich, George Norris, George A. Norris, which I thought meant anarchist, which I thought was pretty funny. Would be a pretty funny way to craft your last name and espouse libertarian values, but I guess not. Beer, yeah, it's not a government license. It's a certification from the Libertarian Party, bud. That's the thing. We don't have to have licenses from the government. We can have certifications from each other. Back in the day, not that long ago, there used to be professional certification agencies. They still exist in engineering, that are private entities that it costs money to buy a certification from, like, let's say ISO or Underwriters Laboratories. And the government, in its overwhelming desire to centralize power, has, of course, started to bring that power in under government control. Excuse me for a second. Okay, Riley, I know you lean towards the left side of the spectrum, even though you recognize certain failings in all of our big government leaders. But what kind of questions? What could a libertarian do to make your life better in Senate District 51? How would you think that we can make life better in Senate District 51? They want to take your. Nobody wants to take your beard. What we want to do is certify your beard as a libertarian beard. That's all. Okay. And I'm saying that you're close. Right now, we've certified your official beard length at about a quarter is libertarian. What you're working towards is 100% certification for whatever beard you want. You don't have to get it. You can still grow your beard. It's just not a certified libertarian beard. Okay. Does that make sense? That gets into a better governmental system of how we can get more tradespeople certified to do work in certain areas and lower prices for everyone. So let me ask you this, guys. Is there a war for liberty, and are we winning? Does anybody want to talk about that? Hoping to get some more comments, you guys. It's a Friday night. Where is everyone? Normally we fill the lobby up with questions, and I see the likes, the comments, shares. If you have the guts to share this to your personal page, please do. If you have questions, please ask them. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you're going with it. You're supporting my third-party candidacy, which I appreciate. So if I was to imagine a Democrat question, I think it would go something like, what program can we create that's going to solve all of our problems in Senate District 51? And of course, as a libertarian, I would say there is no government program that is going to solve our problems in Senate District 51. Oh, that's all right, brother. I'm really glad you're here. That's all. Whenever. What? Okay. Hey, Lucianne. It was great talking to you the other day. I really appreciate it. What is liberty to most people these days? So that's a great question, because I think that liberty on a lot of levels has been lost, right? What we're talking about now every day is how the state can solve all of our problems. And when we look at the state solving all of our problems, which I honestly feel New York is trying to do. Okay, New York State tries to come up with a new program and a new program and a new program and a new mandate, and you've got to do it this way and you've got to do it that way. And we would look at that behavior, and we've lost several million people over the last few years. We have to wonder. We know that liberty's been lost, and the process through which it's been lost is over taxation, over regulation, and every time we turn around, we feel like we're going to get a boot on our neck. And then even like we were talking, you and I were talking about bail reform, and even that in a sense is a loss of liberty when Governor Cuomo and a one-party controlled legislature comes through with a solution that doesn't serve its communities, and when they start investigating our local judges and things like that. And for civil rights violations because of a new law that we're not even sure would pass constitutional muster, because it hasn't been challenged that way, and frankly is dangerous. We've got people caught up in the midst of violent crime sprees getting released without bail and without getting released without any custodial supervision of them, and that's what bail offers. And that's what our local justices earn their money to do, is to protect us. Even if we craft a better bail reform where we get to dealing with nonviolent criminals and minor like weed infractions, things like that don't really bother me that much. I think that we would be much better off having that conversation, and the mandates with no funding. They're nearly constant. I thought of several, and I've had conversations about several. But now, when you go into a restaurant, right, and you get a plastic menu, you get a paper menu that has to be thrown away after you use it. That's a mandate that a small business that's been closed for months is going to have a hard time paying for. Changing ventilation systems in privately owned property where you're renting out stores and stuff like that. That's an unfunded mandate that's forced onto private property owners like malls and stuff like that. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying, oh, well, the government should pay for them. Those two things are not. What we don't know is the effectiveness of these new filtration systems. And we don't know, combined with the masks and everything else, does that stuff actually work? And those are the questions that need to be answered with science, not political science. And they're not being answered, right? There's a lot of feel good, unfunded mandate style legislation that comes down the pipe all the time. So how do we fix that? What's the argument? I already covered that one. Hey, Dubs, what's up, brother? I just had a great conversation with this young man, and guys, I think it'd be interesting to explore the notion of what the future is for libertarianism. And that's what Ziggy Innovative and I were discussing, along with Ted. And the future of libertarianism is a challenge because right now it's kind of nebulous. It's kind of in a flux. And we're wondering, like lots of us know, less government is a great idea, right? And the reasons why would less government be a great idea? And Lucianne asked the question. We need the ability to have jobs within District 51. I agree. I absolutely agree. And I absolutely have to say that that's one of the areas where if we take a look at what the government of New York State does with its high taxation, with its programs to solve every single problem, we've developed what we would call a welfare cliff, okay? So, and in New York State, the welfare cliff is the highest welfare cliff in the country. So if you get a job, and guys, this isn't because I support the notion of public assistance for everyone all the time, but it's a reality that we have to face. If we want more people willing to work, they have to not go broke by going to work. That doesn't mean that means the answer is a higher and ever increasing minimum wage. We've got to balance it out with the fact that taxation is too high. And we need entrepreneurship as a pathway back to economic success and a pathway back to young people who would want to come to New York State and make a living. So obviously, Lucianne, as I know, and I don't know if we all agree on everything, but one of the things that I'm advocating for is for New York State to legalize things like cannabis and marijuana production, because there's a race all over the country to legalize CBD and hemp products, and people are finding a real lot of health benefits, and they're finding them based on a human interaction with this weed for two millennia, almost like 2,000 years, 3,000 years. That was part of our culture. And then somewhere in the 50s or 60s, a rich, wealthy industrialist bought a bunch of regulations that terrified people away from marijuana, cannabis, CBD, hemp, and that's really where we're at. We need to get rid of those regulations. We can regulate it like onions, and maybe that's an exaggeration, but we will overtax it to the point where it doesn't benefit our communities, and some big, huge company like Philip Morris will come in the door, buy the right regulations. New York State will be like, well, we're going to tax it like crazy for the children, and you can only sell it to Philip Morris, so we'll have like a monopoly on the purchasing of these products and a monopoly on the outlet of those products, enforced by New York State government. That won't get us the best prices, and that won't benefit our communities. All right. Careers, not jobs. Right. But the issue is that entrepreneurship in and of itself is a career. Okay. So careers, not jobs it almost sounds like, and I know you're not really going there, Tommy, because I know you and I know your heart, but it's not like we need more government jobs. Government already has a monopoly on jobs, and they have a monopoly on chasing economic opportunity out of the state. And those things need to be said on the floor of the Senate over and over and over again. And we've got to do that battle. We've got to have that fight. Yes, you are at least as knowledgeable as I am about hemp and weed and marijuana and cannabis. And we're going to have a guy that's been working on those products for 3 decades coming up on the show. And so, guys, as a senator, and Lucy will tell you, I'm very willing to expand my understanding of the current lingo and expand on my points and actually take advice on everything that I say. So I think that those things you also need from a senator, because number one, I enjoy this interaction. I enjoy these kind of questions, and I enjoy the discussion. So if I don't get something perfectly correct, please reach out to me, and we can have those conversations over and over again. And you will not find, I don't believe, another politician as dedicated to having conversations about your life and how New York State should move forward than me, because literally I'm willing to live it. And I am living it when I don't even have the platform yet. I don't even have that job, and I'm still willing to have the conversation. I will check that out. Thank you. With marijuana, though, I will say this, that there are a number of studies and a number of people that support the notion that it is a much, much better pain reliever and far, far, far less addictive than the opioids. And that the opioids getting regularly prescribed has caused the increased demand for heroin. And that is, especially during this COVID crisis, is causing a lot of health problems for young people. A lot of people are suffering from depression and turning to drugs, illegal drugs, to ease the pain of losing their job, to ease the pain of them losing their business, to ease the pain of everyone else in their family leaving the state, which all of those things are absolutely real and without a doubt a fact. And that's one of the problems of New York State. And no politician really, really wants to talk about that. They want to come up with programs to fix things, and they want to come up with, I want to call them platitudes. They want to legislate their platitudes, and they want the government now to go into economic development. And government has a role in providing infrastructure for economic development, but now we're going direct to market. The government is providing economic development without any promises that that economic development is going to do what it's promised to do, other than spend our tax dollars on economic development. And I don't care that they get some grant from the government, because who picks up the tab when that grant runs out is guys like us and girls like us that are out there doing the work every day. The low to middle to upper income, middle class people, they pick up that bill every day. That's why New York State is the highest tax state in the nation. Somebody could try to tell me California's tax slightly higher than us. I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that, okay? And that California has a different way of collecting taxes because it's such a major import hub that they can collect a lot of taxes there that don't get passed on to the people in the state. New York State has the highest burden of taxation of any state in the country. Any state in the country. And also, we're like behind the times on so many things. It was, yeah. See, that's the reality, right? Hemp used to be used all the time. And when we're talking on the order of 40, 50, 60,000 acres in Senate District 51 and 10,000 acres in Otsego County that used to be productive, we're not talking about destroying our landscape, guys. We'll still be able to drive down the road, look up at the side hills, see the beautiful trees, the lush vegetation, and realize that we live in a special part of the world. Okay, we do. It's beautiful. The weather it gets a little chilly, but other than that, like we don't get huge amounts of hurricanes. We don't get huge amounts of tornadoes. It's relatively consistent other than it gets cold, which I like. I like going outside and working in the cold. So that's me. But if economic opportunity followed with the inconvenience of a chilly season or a cold season, kids would love it. There's hunting, there's recreation, there's trails. People would love it. And guys, there is so much room for people to move in Senate District 51, to rehab old houses, to rehab old properties, to rehab old farms. There's so much room for that I can't believe that we're not talking about it every single day, that it's not the headlines of the Daily Star every single day when somebody actually decides to come here, right? And we do. The Libertarian Party and the Conservative Party, we've met people that have come here, and that's great, but we need more. All right, let's see if I can catch up on a couple comments. And guys, thank you for the comments, because that is the stuff that I love. That's why I do this. That's why on Friday night I'm sharing at least an hour of my time with you guys. Just they have Robert Force. Yes, first of all, there's always time to put up and I'm glad you're here, right? The SaveTheForestFarm.com banner, and you guys should all check that out. And I don't want to say hoping, but we did have a recent property seizure that I was very, very concerned about. And I talked to the guy, the leasee of the land, and it apparently overall wasn't as horrible as I thought it was, the way it looked. And guys, that's why shows like this, broadcasts are important, because you can read an article in 2 minutes and you get zero information, and our mainstream media presents that like it's an actual authority on any subject, and sometimes it's not. Okay, and they don't get to deep dive into information like that. So I'm going to have this guy on the show next week, George Norwich, and I am going to pick his mind about, hemp, CBD, cannabis, legalization, deregulation, and how he's managed to make a living doing this over the years. Hey, Kelly, thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it. Now, I just found out that ATV and side-by-sides can legally drive down roads of towns if they designate the roads as ATV. Why aren't more of these places doing this? To bring people would love that, right? And the more that we do allow freedom, I mean, guys, like, can we just try freedom? And as long as we're respecting each other, that would be better. So I've always known that these side roads you can drive ATVs on, especially as long as you're polite, nobody's going to call the cops on you. But it's also legal. There's a certain amount of legal transportation, slow-moving farm vehicles, ATVs, and side-by-sides that can drive down the road. Now, I'm not sure if it's I know the side-by-sides can. I'm not sure if it's actual ATVs can go down the road, especially the sporty ones. I'm not sure about that, but definitely side-by-sides, because they can be classified as a farm or work vehicle that doesn't need insurance and licensing. They can drive down the road. But tell me if I'm wrong and help me out. Thank you, Lucienne. I am very willing to listen, more so than I even can let on. I can listen to more things than even up to this point I have done. I promise you that. It could replace plastic. It does create an oil and a moldable, if you process it right, a moldable end result. That, by the way, is biodegradable. Imagine that, right? Straws that actually biodegrade, plastic bags that actually biodegradable, like straight up biodegradable, just like most products from nature are biodegradable, right? Yes, absolutely, tons of room for that. Growing, yes, I imagine you were talking about growing hemp and marijuana and CBD and stuff like that, those products. So guys, there's the Save the Forest Farm. Let me see what else I can put up there to. So look, this is the sloppiest link of all, but if you go to donorbox.org and you punch in Tim for New York State Senate District 51, that will give you guys a link to donate me some money for this campaign. I'm doing the work regardless of the donations, but I still need some money. Do some down the stretch advertising to get me to places to meet people, things like that. All right, it's important, and I have had lots of great help. I'm certainly not complaining about that, but a little bit more help can always go help us grow liberty, guys. Like that's what we're trying to do. That's the reality. That's what the old guard movement, what I'm doing, we're growing liberty. It's the battle for liberty. It's a battle for individual rights. A real civil rights battle is the battle for individual rights in New York State, period. Okay, that's the bottom line. The government is micromanaging everything. The side gig economy isn't necessarily, you know what? I'm glad you asked this. All right, many people are now making a better living doing things they enjoy than they were trying to have traditional careers a few years ago. The side gig economy is huge. I have a big one that, and guys, look, if someone who works for the county wants to tell me that I'm absolutely crazy, fine. But the side gig economy, as a libertarian, when I see empty buses driving all over Otsego County, empty public buses driving empty all over Otsego County, I've got to suggest, and if you put the numbers to the paper, that side gigs like Ubering, some of those necessary travels that we want to offer as a community to people that are in need. Guys, we don't want to just throw this stuff away. Okay. We don't want to just be nasty and mean. We want it to be more affordable. We're not saying, hey, you're SOL. It's let's do it in the most affordable way that we can. So if we start doing Ubering for people that need transportation from Oneonta to Cooperstown instead of running a bus line with empty buses all the time, do you think we could save money? I feel like we could. And I think that I would argue for that. Concepts like that. Fabric paper rope. Yes, we're going through. Yes, that's okay, bud. I think I got what you were saying. A town can make roads. Okay. What if they don't designate it? Are they like what if without the designation, is it automatically assumed to be illegal? I'm wondering about that. On the ATVs can be registered. That's a good question. Now, if they get registered, do you have to put insurance on them? Is that the process? Because if they're insured and registered, then I think you would be able to take them down the road. All right. So what I went off on a rant, guys. I talked about the welfare cliff, right? The war on liberty. I talked about Cuomo. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Still looking for some more questions or suggestions because I did my rants. I covered them. The likes, the comments, the shares, guys, they are very important. Big fan. I am, and I'm glad that you joined me, Ziggy, because that side gig thing, and even if we can use the government can get involved in that, that would be great if they could set up Uber accounts. And I think they already provide transportation sometimes with via taxi cabs. Also, guys, the Family Service Association, if I talk about the Family Service Association, it's because my mom was associated with it. I don't want them to necessarily suffer from my association with them because I'm very proud of what they've done. I know that they provide transportation vouchers for people in need, and that's based on an individual delivery of taxi rides from place to place. And if you guys have clothes that are in good shape, you have a couple extra bucks, the Family Service Association on Chestnut Street. My mom used to run it. It's a local charity. I used to run a golf tournament for them to help them raise money. And it was when people connected the notion that they could play golf and help a local charity, that golf tournament, the first year was great. And it grew every year after that. And that's what freedom can be about if we can afford to be free, right? And so people would play golf. We would raise lots of money. People would buy sponsorships. We raised great money for a local charity and help them get their name out there and help them keep their business on the map. All right. Yes, I agree. But what we've moved to, I think, Lucianne, in New York, and I'd like to push back on it because not on you, on the concept that somehow transportation, mass transportation, is exactly the right way to go. So everywhere we look in small towns and communities, there's always this government mandated, granted, they give them money to get the program started and they hope it pays for itself. This government mandated notion of mass transit. And what I'm talking about with replacing that with more side hustle stuff, like I would imagine that the OPT in Oneonta does reasonably well. They have a customer base that's willing to pay to take convenient rides from place to place. And I'll get to the other part about Cuomo too. But to blow this notion up, that in the city of Oneonta and over to the malls and over to the Walmarts and back up to the Job Corps and the colleges and stuff like that, I would imagine that does reasonably well and probably doesn't cost our community a lot of money. But I will bet you that it does cost our community some money. But I still think we would maximize. We have a real benefit there of providing people access to shopping and people access to jobs and part-time jobs and things that they can work around their college schedule and they can venture out into the community and of course go downtown and have a few drinks or whatever. You know what kids do, man. Let's not be unrealistic. So I would imagine that piece of the transit system works really well. But when I do see the occasional bus go out to Worcester and I do see the buses between Oneonta and Cooperstown, and yeah, that especially. So now let's move on to Cuomo shut down the state with COVID-19. Why doesn't the county respond? And I'm not saying that they're not responding. I know they feel locked into serving the budget and serving these ephemeral quality of life issues, which mass transportation is an ephemeral quality of life issue if it's costing the community and not providing a real service. Okay, so it becomes ephemeral. So the idea is, well, we've got to provide this quality of life issue. We need mass transportation, but we're not delivering it effectively. So therefore, we're wasting resources and we're burdening the taxpayers in Otsego County. And I firmly believe, and after having drove around Senate District 51 and talking to radio announcers up in, oh my God, what's the name of the town? It was up towards Cortland. Starts with an M. It wasn't Marathon, it was North Marathon. Anyways, these are issues that play out all over Senate District 51. And I think that we've got to reinvent the concept of what quality of life is. And we can't reimagine quality of life without discussing the burden of taxation and what we have done to people like us that get up and go to work every day. And guys, and how we've disincentivized people on public assistance. They're very disincentivized to get out there and get a job. Okay. All right. So we're expanding our understanding of how ATVs have to be, it has to be a designated ATV road. So if my 65-year-old neighbor drives in front of my house on his ATV, can I call the police on him? Because he called the dog guy on my dog one day. I'm totally kidding. I want him. He comes by and he waves. This is totally a joke. But I'm wondering if I could get even with him for calling the dog guy on me. And all it was my dog went up and got into his garbage. So, and it was totally a mistake. Okay, the ATV comment reminds me of the cops going after licensed carts driving on the road at the Knoxville, and I know you're big into racing, at the Knoxville Raceway in Iowa. So the property owners then say we can drive on their yard, resulting in everyone on the that's kind of hilarious. So what you're saying is the property owners around Knoxville Raceway in Iowa enjoy racing so much that they said to the car drivers, you can drive on our lawns. Is that accurate? That's pretty cool. And then what are my views on the alternative of privatized roads? Okay. Now, my views, because we do have to reinvent this concept of infrastructure somehow. Now, my views are if we didn't have roads, we'd have flying cars by now, okay? That the system itself has prevented technological innovation. So the road system itself has prevented technological innovation. Now, this is where I'm getting into a philosophical discussion of libertarianism, not a rational approach to fixing the problem with roads. So the rational approach to fixing the problem with the roads would be finding the answer to the question why roads in New York cost, let's say 40,000. And this is just an example, guys. You know, I use numbers and I kind of pull them out of my head, and smarter people like Lucianne will bust me for it. But so let's say a road costs $30,000 a mile in New York State, and a road costs $10,000 a mile in Texas. That, as a libertarian, is steering the government in a better direction when we start exploring those notions. So privatizing the roads. Larry Sharpe has a very interesting concept of selling parts of the infrastructure on roads to, not selling, you letting, let's say, Taco Bell buy the Tappan Zee Bridge. So instead of it being the Mario Cuomo Bridge, it is now the Taco Bell Bridge. And would Taco Bell pay enough money to actually offset some of the costs of maintaining that bridge and for the advertising on it? Some of that stuff I find very appealing. Do we just start tearing up the roads and letting them go into the ground and see what happens? No, we can't really do it that way. But we've got to find a way to save money on how we build our roads, and we've got to find a way to save money on how we maintain our roads, because that's a burden on, again, lower to middle class people with the high rates of taxation. You know my mom? All right. Yes, they do not charge they charge for nothing there. They accept donations. They do get some money from the United Way, but they have 3 or 4 local fundraisers to keep their name in front of the community, okay? And if you guys find my political views controversial, please don't associate them with the Family Service Association, which is a local charity that literally put clothes on my back when I was an 8-year-old kid. So it's been in business forever. But I support the concept of the Family Service Association. I was very active in raising money for the Family Service Association, and that's what I want you guys to know, okay? And they don't charge for anything there. They will accept donations, and if you guys can bring them clothes, and please don't bring them clothes that you're just going to throw away anyway. Bring them stuff that you really just don't want anymore, but still is nice. Or you bought it and it doesn't fit you and it's practically brand new. Those kind of things have very positive impacts on people's psyche, right? If they go there and they get a really nice, they're on their way to a job interview in a couple of days, and they go there and they get a really nice piece of clothing that they feel good about, that has a very positive impact on people's psyches. And so that's the kind of stuff that they really, really need. Okay, so if I was senator, I would talk to all the towns and be like, designate every road an ATV road except for the main state roads. And I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I would advocate for that we can let people, drive their ATVs around on the roads a little bit. Unfunded mandates are hidden slavery. Taxation, property taxes is a hidden slavery, okay? I don't even mean to be impolite about it. We have agreements that we want some governance, but when our governance costs us so much money that it's chasing our children out of here and chasing economic opportunity out of here, it feels more and more like administrative slavery. You're right, Ken. I agree with the concept. As a politician, I would try to find a nicer way to say that, but I absolutely get the concept. And taxation is stuff, guys. No matter what, it's taxation without consent, and that's what's going on in New York State. And it's got to at least change direction. We have to open the doors to economic opportunity, and we've got to stop doing it by trying to bribe big, huge businesses to come here. Okay, that doesn't work. They don't come. They literally outfox Cuomo every step of the way. Even Elon Musk, who is a philosophical genius and clearly has some technology stuff, but he's outfoxed Cuomo. Cuomo's paid for everything for Elon Musk to come out to Buffalo. Oh God, the monorails. What we need are monorails, Tommy. We need monorails. I don't know. What I will tell you is that individual transportation, in my mind, as a libertarian, all right, your car can be more efficient. We can redesign that, and if we kind of back off, I think over the next few years, we're going to see a revolution in transportation anyway, with the advent of 5G and self-driving cars. And as we get more electric production and electric cars become more feasible, we're going to see a revolution in the transportation industry, unlike anything that we've seen ever. And you guys mark it down, okay? Self-driving trucks are already a thing. They're coming. And what do we do about them? So whatever happened to the idea, I don't think, in my mind, transporting people by train is inefficient, because if I take a train from Oneonta to Binghamton, first of all, I've got to get to the depot to get on the train to go to Albany or to go to Binghamton. And then I've got to get off the train in Binghamton and find another source of transportation to get me to my ideal destination, right? So there's an efficiency to having a car or a self-powered vehicle that is way more efficient for the individual. Now, does it cost society more in terms of burning fossil fuels? Boy, it's hard for me to. We don't wait in toll booths, right? We don't. Our transportation system, in a sense, is incredibly efficient. We get to go where we want to go when we want to go there. So I think that that's important, guys. If you could, I always ask for a few favors. Number one, give me money if you can. Number two, if you can follow me on YouTube in case I do lose access to Facebook, if I say the wrong thing about Cuomo and I get quashed. And like I said, I'm also broadcasting on Twitter. Those two things can help keep the lines of communication open, and it will help Facebook behave better, I think, if they see competition, and people pushing them towards competition. So that's my opinion on that. I don't. It wouldn't work. They would have to install a side track, and it would have to be a much better track, right? It would have the quality of the track now. They already maintain it every year. They've got big, huge trains going up and down that track every year, replacing bad ties and replacing bad rails. So the quality required for a commuter train line, is my understanding, is it has to be next level, higher quality. So it would be so expensive to put in. How many people would go from Oneonta to Binghamton to work when, maybe, I don't know. There's Binghamton's, guys, I went to college there. I went down there and visited. Binghamton is shrinking like every other place in New York. Okay, it's literally not the same town as when I went to college at SUNY Binghamton 30 years ago. It's not the same town. It's sad, really. Okay, it's lost a lot of people. It's lost a lot of economic opportunity. There's still some stuff going down there, but IBM used to carry that town, and if the positive effects of IBM were still in place when I went there, and now IBM is gone because it was chased out of the state by taxation, and it's not there anymore. Yes, exactly, Jesse. That's what we're talking about. Could we have enough purchasing of naming rights on infrastructure to make that a worthwhile idea? Anything that we pick up would be good, but then there would be an open market kind of competitive bidding on how much money you would want to get to put your name on. And again, let's use the Tappan Zee Bridge. It's one of the most traveled bridges in the world. It's a pretty Mario Cuomo Bridge. God, why? Just keep it to Tappan Zee. Anyway, but yeah, so would there be enough? And I think that there would be. I think that Larry makes a great point that there would be enough money to have a very positive impact on revenue collection, what we would call by agreement for advertising on infrastructure, just like they already do on baseball stadiums. And guys, we pick up the tab on baseball stadiums, like we already pick up the tab on the bridges. Let's get some money back by selling naming rights. I think it's one of, Larry has a bunch of great ideas. That's one of my favorite ideas of his. Absolutely. First of all, Steve, thank you for being here. Second of all, me and you aren't going to bigger cities, man. I see you holding that salmon in your hands. It's like, I don't know. Would I take a train to New York City? No. If I have to go to New York City, I'm driving down to my relative's house. I'm driving through the city as fast as I can. I'm not going to stop and park. And I'm not afraid of going to the city. I've been there plenty of times. It's just the odds of me going out of my way to get on a train to go to New York City are effectively zero. Now, would it be interesting for our younger people to have access to a safe ride to New York City and a safe ride back? Maybe. Are they going to spend 4 hours on a train? Maybe. I mean, I would, if you wanted to advocate for that and talk to me about it, I would definitely talk about that. And as that, would that be, how would we do it in the most libertarian way possible? But thank you for the idea and the concept, and I'd be willing to explore it. I don't know if you guys watch The Simpsons at all, but there was this whole monorail salesman, and the guy comes to town and be like, you know what Shelbyville needs? You know, a monorail. And then he gets him into a bidding war for the monorails, and it was something that the town never really needed. Springfield versus Shelbyville. I'll be quiet. You won't be quiet about racing after this. I know you won't. But that's okay. And Billy Decker, remember? I used to hang out with him, and he's like a famous racing guy now. Okay, I'll be quiet about. As a New Yorker, I'm curious because Cuomo could have had the Syracuse Mile portioned off from the fairgrounds and sold. As the one last dirt mile racetrack, the attempt to keep it open could have earned the state a pretty penny. The state has high taxes but doesn't want money. Yeah, and I don't know the exact story about that, but the state makes decisions all the time to signal their virtue, and I think that they don't feel like dirt track racing is safe or something, right? So would they get involved in that? All right, here we go. Yeah, I would like. There are places where we could have roads and experiment with the notion. You're absolutely right, right? A bridge over that stream over it is so inefficient to get there right now. Like if we could put that in, would people pay 50 cents to take a shortcut from that side of town to from the F&F airport roughly over to the south side? They might. Could James F. Lettis Highway be converted into some sort of, hey, you got to pay us or you got to go around the long way down to the lower end of town? And would we willingly pay that money? And of course, it can't work on James F. Lettis Highway, but I like that idea, right? How much would that cost to put in? Because as you guys know, in Oneonta, F&F Airport is much closer to Lowe's than anything else, and it's impossible to get from F&F Airport over to Lowe's without. It's like a 12-minute drive. Cuomo is pay to play, guys. We've seen it over and over again. And his stories of corruption and the guys that he's associated with that have been arrested and not he's like Teflon though, man. How does this stuff slide off of him? I honestly don't understand it. New tracks, New York City. Yeah. Career jobs, all those things, right? And career jobs come with economic opportunity. I know, but I'll put it up on my screen. I will. I definitely will. Yes, and I'm sad about that. It was not the nicest city that I'd ever been to anyway, but it in my opinion it's declined. And guys, there used to be a great community down there. I used to work in the community when I was going to school because grew up a poor kid. So I used to bartend at night down there. And I would work in local bars. I didn't work at the nightclubs and stuff like that. I worked in local bars, and there are so many nice people, nice families in Binghamton that their heads got to be spinning. Their taxes are going up. A lot of them probably left, retired to Florida. When their jobs left, they left. They followed. Oh, okay. All right. I'd have to check that out. I know some other people from New Rochelle. You know who is actually from New Rochelle, Tommy? Who was born in New Rochelle? My mom. Not even kidding. That's where she was born. Then they moved out to Long Island. And then she came to school up here and stayed here just like you did. I don't know, man. I think that New York has an infrastructure problem in that our infrastructure, the way that we build it, costs too much money to build. Now, would they benefit and how would they benefit? I don't know. I would say if we could turn around the concept of economic opportunity, lower taxes, and generate a surplus in New York State, which, guys, the way it looks right now is going to be just about impossible. All right. Then we could talk about those things. And those things get talked about as solutions now, these big government solutions that the burden of taxation on New York is already the highest in the country. So would I say, hey, build a train, because it would be a government funded, at least in part, or government granted system, because who's rebuilding the metro in New York City right now? The metro loses $6 billion a year. So it's the taxpayer in New York State that's rebuilding the metro. They lose $6 billion a year. Doesn't matter if the city generates a surplus of taxes and that Wall Street generates a surplus of taxes, of income taxes. That is irrelevant to the fact that the metro itself loses $6 billion a year and they're spending New York State taxpayer dollars on it. That's the thing about New York City is that they have programs that are losing billions of dollars, and if we're supporting them with our economic resources here and our natural resources here, but they don't return the favor. So the argument that New York City fills the coffers of New York, when the coffers of New York aren't filled, that becomes irrelevant. And it was irrelevant before. It was actually a statement about economic bigotry. I don't care what anybody says. That's what it was. That New York City fills. Yeah, according to our tax code, high income earners are supposed to pay taxes. If they're earning high incomes because they've condemned property in Delaware County and they managed to grow into a megapolis that they ship their garbage up to Auburn, they ship their garbage all over the state, like they are taking advantage of the rest of us. And I don't think that anybody would really be able to argue with that, and that they're losing money on their projects, and that costs us all in the state. That's part of the reason taxation is so high. Everyone is leaving New York City. We all saw the video, brother. Cuomo begging his friends to come back, and his rich billionaire friends. It's just it is what it is, man. I find it to be funny. And guys, I find it to be funny because I'm passionate about improving our situation in New York. And I find it to be funny that we've reelected this guy that is not even aware about what he's done to the economic systems in New York. State owns infrastructure. State rents out names. Sorry, boys. That will strengthen the state and will not reduce taxes. It will if libertarians are running the state. I get what you're saying. It's Larry Sharp's goal, and Larry Sharp's goal, it's Larry Sharp's concept that he's sharing with a lot of people, which I like the idea. His goal is to not raise taxes anymore in New York State and to effectively lower them for everyone in the state. So what you're saying is, yes, I agree. Every time a politician gets a new revenue stream, they spend it, right? It's baseline budgeting. Guys, I'm not even kidding. School buses, my school's not open for my kids until November 9th. The school bus goes past my house every day. Let's think about efficiency. Because of baseline budgeting, they need to spend that transportation budget. There can be no rational decision to send a bus around every single day unless it's baseline budgeting. They want to make sure they spend all the transportation money that they've gotten so that they can make sure that fits the budget for the next years. Guys, I had a blast tonight. I can't believe it. It's like time flies so much when I do this. I like to keep them to an hour, at least for now while I'm campaigning. And plus tomorrow I've got to prep for a discussion with Jim Barber. And it will be a discussion. Like I said, I talked to him on the phone. I genuinely felt like a connection with the guy. Okay. So it's not going to be like, there's going to be things we disagree about, but I'm going to disagree with him as politely as I can. And then maybe do a live afterwards and, make fun of him if I have to. But it's not a goal of making fun of him. He's obviously honorably served our community for decades. He's a guy that's done the hard work of staying in New York and making a living, fifth generation farmer. I'm not knocking the guy. I'm not going to go out of my way to make fun of the guy. And I'm not going to go out of my way to even argue with the guy. I'm going to offer my solutions. I'm going to offer, honestly, one of the, just to make him real to everyone and to make him real to me and to make liberty real to him. Okay. And yes, I am a liberty marketer. I'm not a sociopath. At least I don't think I'm a sociopath. I do enjoy the comments, the likes, the shares, the little bits of money that I've raised, the enjoying conversations where we expand our understanding of what liberty is and what a better path forward is for New York State. Okay. Bottom line is we've squelched economic opportunity. We've got to do better. The government is not the answer to more economic opportunity, and it hasn't been. But guys, it's at an hour. My voice is getting hoarse because I've been talking for about 3 hours straight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the responses, the likes, the shares, and the comments, guys. You have a good night. Thank you all for joining.